At 1,730 hours on October 24, 1942, Private First Class Mitchell Red Harmon crouched behind his Browning M1919A4 machine gun on Hill 312, Guadalcanal, and watched the horizon darken with incoming artillery. The smell hit first. Cordite mixed with red volcanic soil and humid jungle air. Then the sound. Distant thunder rolling across the Matanikau River. Japanese 105mm howitzers, maybe 8 of them, all targeting this 300-yard section of ridgeline. Radio crackled. All positions, brace for impact. Harmon's gun sat in the center position. 40 yards to his left, Corporal Jimmy Reese's crew manned there. 30 calories. 60 yards right, Sergeant Mike Torres and his team. 3 guns covering a 600-yard gap in the Marine defensive line. Should have been 6 guns, should have been 18 Marines. They had 9. Behind Harmon, Corporal Davies fed ammunition belt through the receiver. Private Chen crouched in the shallow foxhole, ready to pass forward another ammunition can. 3 men, 1 gun, 2,800 rounds of linked, 30 caliber. The first shell landed 15 yards short. Red dirt gazered into the air. The second shell hit Reese's position dead center. The gun went silent instantly. The third shell obliterated Torres on the right. Silence there too. The fourth shell landed 3 yards from Harmon's position. Shrapnel ripped through the foxhole. Davies took jagged metal through the chest. He died without making a sound. Chen screamed. His left leg was gone above the knee, severed clean. He bled out in 40 seconds. Harmon lay flat, blood on his face. His ears rang, his left arm burned from shrapnel, but he could move, could see, could fight. 1 gun, 1 Marine, 2,800 rounds. If Hill 312 falls, Henderson falls. If Henderson falls, Guadalcanal falls. 2 months earlier, Marines had landed on Guadalcanal to capture a Japanese airfield under construction. They renamed it Henderson Field. It became the only operational American airstrip in the Solomon Islands. Whoever controlled Henderson controlled the supply routes to Australia. Whoever controlled the supply routes controlled the Pacific War. Japan understood the stakes. They committed the 2nd Division 17,000 troops to retaking the airfield. The plan was simple and brutal: overwhelming night assault across the Matanikau River, break through the southern ridgeline, overrun Henderson by dawn. The Marines had 11,000 exhausted defenders holding a 7-mile perimeter. Malaria had 40% of them combat ineffective, dysentery, jungle rot, and 3 weeks of constant artillery bombardment had ground down the rest. Intelligence estimated the Japanese would hit hardest at the weakest point in the line. Hill 312 was that weak point. 600 yards of open ground overlooking the direct approach to the airfield. Standard doctrine required 6 machine gun positions minimum to cover that frontage. Hill 312 had 3 guns, because there weren't enough Marines to man 6. Now it had 1 gun because Japanese artillery had done its job perfectly. If Hill 312 fell, Japanese infantry would pour through the gap straight toward Henderson Field. The airfield would be overrun by morning. American control of Guadalcanal would end. The strategic situation in the Pacific would collapse. 1 hill, 1 gun, 1 Marine between breakthrough and disaster. Marine Corps defensive doctrine was built on interlocking fields of fire, multiple machine gun positions covering the same kill zone from different angles. Creates crossfire. Enemy can't advance through it, can't retreat from it, can only die in it. The Browning M1919A4 was engineered for this doctrine. 31 pounds, 400 to 600 rounds per minute cyclic rate, effective range 1,500 yards. But it required a 3-man crew minimum. Gunner aimed and fired, assistant gunner fed ammunition belts and cleared jams. Ammo bearer brought forward the heavy metal cans and provided security. 9 Marines operated 3 guns on Hill 312. Should have been 18 Marines for this position. Should have been 6 guns for this frontage. The Japanese artillery barrage lasted 12 minutes. Their forward observers had identified Hill 312 as the weak point. They concentrated fire accordingly. Left gun position took a direct hit. 3 Marines killed instantly. Right gun position obliterated. 3 more dead. Center position, Harmon's position, caught the edge of a near miss. Davies dead. Chen dying. Harmon had superficial shrapnel wounds to his face and left arm. Nothing that would stop him from fighting. 1 functioning gun remained. 2,800 rounds of linked .30 caliber ammunition stacked in metal cans. No backup crew. No interlocking fire. No reinforcements available. Every other position on the 7-mile perimeter was under similar pressure. No Marines could be spared to reinforce Hill 312. The radio squawked. Company, commander's voice, steady despite the circumstances. Hill 312, status report. Harmon keyed the handset. Davies and Chen are down. Gun is operational. Can you hold? Harmon looked at the 2,800 rounds, looked at the 600 yards of open ground below his position, looked at the gathering darkness where 17,000 Japanese soldiers were preparing to attack. I'm still here, sir. The commander didn't respond immediately. Then, hold as long as you can. We'll get reinforcements to you if possible. Both men knew that was a lie. There were no reinforcements. There was just Harmon, 1 gun, and however long his ammunition lasted. Mitchell Harmon grew up in Ogallala, Nebraska, 22 years old, farm family, Dust Bowl survivors. His father worked for the railroad when farming didn't pay. His mother took in laundry. 3 younger siblings depended on Mitchell bringing home dinner. He hunted jackrabbits with a bolt action. .22 rifle. Not for sport, for food. Nebraska jackrabbits were fast, erratic, gone in seconds if you missed. Ammunition cost money the family didn't have. Every shot had to count. He learned to lead moving targets at 100 yards with iron sights. Learned patience, wait for the shot, don't chase it. Learned precision, 1 bullet, 1 kill, 1 meal. His red hair earned him the nickname in boot camp. December 1941 enlistment, 1 day after Pearl Harbor, Paris Island, March 1942. He qualified expert marksman with the M1 Garand rifle. Then came machine gun school at Camp Lejeune. The instructors taught continuous fire doctrine, hosing down the target, sustained bursts, 600 rounds per minute. Create a wall of lead the enemy can't cross. Harmon struggled with the concept. His instinct was controlled bursts, precise targeting. Pick a soldier, fire. Pick another soldier, fire. The instructors marked him hesitant and overcautious. He barely passed qualification. Shipped to Guadalcanal August 1942. Assigned to Weapons Platoon, 1st Battalion, 7th Marines. 3 months of perimeter defense. He'd fought off probing attacks and night patrols. 0 confirmed kills with the 30 calories. Other gunners racked up body counts with suppressive fire. Harmon used ammunition sparingly, took aimed shots. Corporal Davies had once said, "You shoot that thing like it's a rifle, Red." Harmon had replied, "Because I only get to shoot what I can see." Now, alone on Hill 312, with darkness falling and Japanese infantry forming up across the river, he was about to prove whether precision could beat volume. At 1,842 hours, 72 minutes after the artillery barrage ended, Harmon heard them coming. The jungle sounds stopped first. No birds, no insects, just silence pressing against his eardrums like a physical thing. Then came the screaming. Banzai! Banzai! Tenohaka Banzai! 400 Japanese soldiers charged up the slope toward Hill 312. Harmon could see them in the fading twilight. A mass of men moving through the tall grass and scattered palms. They expected to face 3 machine guns creating interlocking fire. They would face 1 gun operated by a farm kid from Nebraska who'd spent his childhood shooting jackrabbits for dinner. Marine Corps doctrine was clear. Continuous fire, 400 to 600 rounds per minute, create a wall of lead, suppress the advance, break the attack through volume. Harmon's finger touched the trigger. Every instinct from training said squeeze and hold. Drain the belt. Hose them down. But something deeper, something learned hunting jackrabbits when ammunition cost money and missed shots meant going hungry made him hesitate. 400 soldiers, 2,800 rounds. If he fired continuously at 500 rounds per minute, he'd be dry in 5.5 minutes, and the Japanese would keep coming for hours. The lead soldier was 200 yards out, moving fast. Rifle held high. Screaming. Harmon centered the sight post on his chest. Squeezed the trigger. 4 rounds. The soldier dropped. Harmon shifted aim 3 degrees left. Next soldier. 4-round burst. Down. Not spraying bullets. Placing them. The Japanese charge kept coming. 180 yards now. The mass of soldiers flowing uphill like a wave. Harmon picked a soldier carrying a satchel charge. Obvious target. Big canvas bag slung over his shoulder. 5-round burst. The satchel charge detonated. Orange flash. 4 soldiers went down in the blast radius. The charge faltered, just for 2 seconds. But those 2 seconds created confusion in the ranks. Soldiers hesitated, looked for the explosion source. Lost momentum. Harmon targeted another leader, an officer screaming orders and waving a sword. 3-round burst. The officer fell. The sword clattered on volcanic rock, 150 yards, close enough to see faces in the dimming light. Young men, determined, charging to their deaths because their orders said charge. Harmon kept firing. Burst. Shift. Burst. Shift. Mechanical precision. No wasted rounds. He wasn't creating suppressive fire. He was creating targeted chaos. Squad leaders falling. Soldiers with explosives falling. NCOs trying to maintain formation falling. Each death created a ripple in the attack. Soldiers stumbling over bodies, breaking stride, losing cohesion. 120 yards. The charge was losing momentum. Some soldiers going to ground, seeking cover in the tall grass. Behind fallen logs. The Banzai attack was supposed to overwhelm defenses before machine guns could inflict decisive casualties. But this machine gun was inflicting decisive casualties with surgical precision. Japanese officers screamed orders, trying to rally the attack. Harmon switched targets to the voices. 4-round burst. One voice went silent. Another officer took up the command. 4-round burst. Second voice, silent. Third officer. Third burst. Silence. Without leaders, the attack disintegrated. Soldiers who'd been charging now hesitated. Some kept coming. Most stalled between 100 and 120 yards. The ones still charging died. 3-round bursts, 4-round bursts. Harmon picked them off methodically. The survivors began retreating. Not organized withdrawal. Panic. Running back down the slope toward the river, Harmon let them go. Didn't waste ammunition shooting men in the back. He'd learned that hunting too. Wounded rabbit running away isn't worth the bullet. The entire engagement lasted 4 minutes. Harmon released the trigger. His hands were shaking slightly. Not fear. Adrenaline. He checked the ammunition belt. Roughly 380 rounds fired. Approximately 70 bursts of 4 to 5 rounds each. He looked down the slope. Bodies everywhere. Estimated 40 to 50 Japanese dead. Unknown wounded crawling back through the grass. Standard doctrine continuous fire at 500 rounds per minute would have expended 800 to 1,000 rounds for the same result. Harmon had conserved 50% of his ammunition. More importantly, he'd learned something. Precision worked better than volume against Banzai charges. He didn't need to create a wall of lead. He needed to target the attack's structure. Kill the leaders. Kill the soldiers carrying explosives. Kill the soldiers maintaining formation. Break their cohesion. Break their will. Harmon reloaded. Drew a fresh ammunition belt from the metal can. His hands were steady now. The shaking had stopped. He'd proven something to himself. The instructors at Camp Lejeune were wrong. You could shoot a machine gun like a rifle. You could aim every burst, and when you did, every burst mattered. The radio squawked. Company commander's voice. Hill 312, we heard firing. Status? Contact. Approximately 400 enemy. They tested the position. Casualties. Enemy casualties estimated 40 to 50. I'm still operational. Silence on the radio. Then, you held alone against 400? Yes, sir. They expected 3 guns. They got 1. It was enough. Can you hold again? Harmon looked at his remaining ammunition. 2,420 rounds. He'd fired 380 in the first engagement. If attacks continued at this rate, he had ammunition for 6 more engagements. Maybe 7 if he stayed disciplined. Until I run out of bullets or they run out of men, sir. Understood. We're attempting to get reinforcements to you. But every position is under pressure. You may be alone for a while. Understood, sir. The radio went silent. Harmon sat behind his gun and waited. The smell of cordite hung in the humid air. Downslope, wounded Japanese soldiers moaned in the darkness. He couldn't help them, couldn't risk leaving his position, could only wait for the next attack. Because the Japanese would come again. They had 17,000 soldiers committed to taking Henderson Field. Losing 50 men meant nothing. They'd regroup, they'd adapt, they'd come with a different tactic. And Harmon would be waiting. 1 Marine, 1 gun, 2,400 rounds, and a technique learned hunting jackrabbits in Nebraska that was about to rewrite Marine Corps doctrine. The moon rose over the jungle, 3/4 full, enough light to see by, enough light to aim by. Harmon checked his gun, worked the action, everything functioned smoothly. He settled in to wait. At 1,947 hours, Harmon used the lull to reload and check his gun's condition. The barrel was warm. Not hot yet, but warm enough to notice. Continuous fire doctrine would have overheated the barrel by now, would have risked warping the metal, rendered the weapon inoperable. But his controlled bursts kept the temperature manageable. The barrel could sustain fire for hours at this rate. He ran his hands over the receiver, checked the feed mechanism. No jams, no stoppages. The Browning was a reliable weapon when treated properly, when not abused with sustained, continuous fire. Chen's body lay 6 feet away, covered with a poncho. Davies slumped against the sandbags behind the gun position. Harmon tried not to look at them, tried not to think about the fact that 12 hours ago they'd been eating canned rations and complaining about the heat. Now they were dead and he was alone. The radio crackled. Hill 312, status check. Still here, sir. Gun is operational. Approximately 2,400 rounds remaining. Good. Hold your position. Japanese are probing all along the line. They're looking for weak points. Acknowledged. Harmon knew what that meant. The first attack had been a test, a probe. The Japanese were learning the Marine defensive positions, learning where the guns were, learning where the weak points were. Now they'd adapt. At 2,015 hours, the second attack came. Different pattern this time. Not one mass charge. 3 smaller groups, 50 to 60 soldiers each, attacking from different angles. Left flank, center, right flank. The Japanese commander had adapted to the single gun position. Strategy was simple. Draw his fire in one direction while advancing from another. Harmon recognized the tactic immediately. Same pattern coyotes used hunting rabbits in Nebraska. Feint from one direction, real attack from another. He'd lost rabbits to that tactic as a kid. He wasn't going to lose this hill to it now. The 3 groups were 250 yards out. Moving through the darkness, using available cover, more tactical than the first Banzai charge, more disciplined. Harmon made a choice. Ignored the left and right groups initially, focused everything on the center group. They were the closest threat, 230 yards. Moving fast through open ground, he fired, burst, shift, burst. Targeted the leaders first, then soldiers with visible equipment, satchel charges, radio packs, officers. 3 soldiers went down in rapid succession. The center group slowed, took cover. Left group at 180 yards now, closing fast. Right group at 200 yards, both trying to exploit his focus on the center. Harmon swiveled left, fired 4 bursts into the left group. not trying to stop them completely, just enough to disrupt, create casualties, force them to slow down, think twice about committing. Back to center. 3 bursts. Keep pressure on the main threat. Swivel right. 4 bursts into the right group. 2 soldiers dropped. The others went to ground. Back to center. The pattern was working. He wasn't trying to create sustained fire on any single target. Just enough bursts to disrupt all 3 groups, keep them off balance, prevent them from coordinating. The Japanese soldiers began to understand. Every time they committed to advance, someone died. Not random spray of bullets, precise targeting. The soldier in front, the soldier with equipment, the soldier giving orders. Center group stalled at 140 yards. Went to ground behind available cover. Left group stopped at 150 yards. Right group retreated back to 200 yards. Japanese officers tried to rally the troops. Harmon heard the voices. Sharp commands in Japanese. He targeted the voices. 4 separate bursts. 4 separate silences. Without leadership, the attack dissolved. Soldiers stayed pinned behind cover, made no attempt to advance, no attempt to coordinate. After 6 minutes of stalemate, they began retreating, small groups moving back down the slope, disappearing into the darkness. Engagement time, 6 minutes. Rounds expended, approximately 450. 3 attacks disrupted simultaneously with controlled burst fire. Japanese casualties estimated at 20 to 30. His ammunition remaining, 1,950 rounds. Harmon reloaded. Drew another belt from the ammunition can. His hands were starting to blister from handling the metal links, the rough edges cutting into his palms. He wrapped his hands with strips of cloth torn from his shirt. Not ideal, but better than nothing. The radio squawked. Hill 312, we monitored that engagement. 3 separate attack groups? Yes, sir. They adapted, tried to split my fire. Did it work? Negative. They're regrouping now. Estimate next attack in 30 to 45 minutes. How's your ammunition? Harmon did the math. 2 attacks. 850 rounds expended, 1,950 remaining, approximately 70% remaining, sir. Silence on the radio. The company commander was doing the same math. 850 rounds, 2 attacks. If attacks continued at this rate, Harmon would be dry after 4 more engagements, maybe 5. And there were still 10 hours until dawn. Conserve ammunition as much as possible. We're trying to get reinforcements to you. Understood, sir. But Harmon knew better. There were no reinforcements. Every position on the 7-mile perimeter was under similar pressure. Marines were dying all along the line. Nobody could be spared to reinforce. Hill 312. He was alone, would be alone until dawn, or until his ammunition ran out, or until the Japanese overran his position. He checked his rifle. M1 Garand. 8 rounds in the internal magazine, 64 more rounds in bandoliers across his chest. When the machine gun went dry, the rifle would be his last weapon. 8 rounds at a time against however many Japanese soldiers were still willing to charge. The math didn't work in his favor. But math hadn't worked in his favor since 1730 hours. He'd been alone for 2.5 hours, held off 2 attacks, killed 70 to 80 Japanese soldiers, all with a technique the instructors at Camp Lejeune said was wrong. Harmon settled behind his gun and waited for the 3rd attack. His hands hurt, his ears rang from the constant firing, his left arm burned where shrapnel had cut him. None of it mattered. What mattered was the gun still worked. He still had ammunition, and he still knew how to aim. At 2,108 hours, the 3rd attack came, from darkness. The moon had disappeared behind thick clouds. Visibility dropped to maybe 50 yards. Harmon could see vague shapes moving in the blackness, but no detail, no way to pick individual targets, no way to aim with precision. The Japanese were trying a new tactic, silent infiltration, instead of Banzai charges. No battle cries, no screaming, just infantry advancing through darkness without sound. Smart adaptation. If Harmon couldn't see them, He couldn't shoot them with precision. He listened instead. Footsteps in grass, equipment rattling, heavy breathing of men moving uphill under load. The sounds came from multiple directions. Left, center, right. They were trying the same three-pronged approach, but in darkness. Hoping his muzzle flash would give away his exact position, hoping he'd panic and waste ammunition firing blind. Marine Corps doctrine said fire anyway, suppressive bursts into the darkness, spray rounds at probable enemy positions, create enough volume to force them to ground. But Harmon's ammunition situation didn't allow for suppressive fire. 1,950 rounds remaining. Unknown number of attacks still coming. He needed to make every burst count. So he waited, listened. The footsteps grew closer. 200 yards, 180, 160. His finger rested on the trigger. Every instinct screamed to open fire. But firing meant giving away his position, meant drawing coordinated return fire, meant burning ammunition without confirmed targets. 140 yards. Harmon could see movement now. Vague shapes in the darkness. Could estimate position by sound. Center mass of the largest concentration was roughly 130 yards out, 45 degrees left of his gun's current position. He swiveled the gun slowly, lined up on where he estimated the center of the formation would be. Waited 3 more seconds, let them close to 120 yards, then fired. Single, 5-round burst. The muzzle flash lit up the slope for half a second. Harmon saw Japanese soldiers clearly, saw the lead soldier take rounds center mass, saw him fall, saw the others drop prone immediately. Screams confirmed hits. At least 2 wounded, maybe 3. The Japanese soldiers went completely still, trying to locate his position from the muzzle flash. Harmon heard whispered commands in Japanese, officers repositioning troops, trying to coordinate a rush on his position. He listened for the movement, heard rustling 30 yards to the left of his original target. Someone crawling through grass, trying to flank. Harmon swiveled left, estimated position by sound, fired single, 4-round burst. Another scream. The psychological impact was devastating. The Japanese soldiers couldn't see him clearly, couldn't coordinate their advance. But every burst felt targeted, personal, like he could see them perfectly in the darkness when they couldn't see him. Japanese officers tried to maintain order. Harmon heard their process, voices, sharp commands trying to rally the troops. He fired at the sounds. 3 separate bursts, 3 separate voices went silent. The attack broke apart. Soldiers began retreating without orders, crawling back down the slope, dragging wounded with them. The entire engagement lasted 8 minutes. Harmon had fired approximately 180 rounds, his most efficient engagement yet. 1,950 rounds minus 180, 1,770 remaining. The darkness had actually helped him. The Japanese couldn't see they were facing a single gun, couldn't coordinate to exploit his isolation. His precision fire created the illusion of multiple defensive positions, each burst from a slightly different angle, each burst perfectly targeted. The Japanese believed they were facing a fully manned defensive line. At 2,143 hours, the radio crackled. Hill 312, battalion is attempting to send reinforcements. Can you hold until they arrive? Harmon looked at his remaining ammunition, did the math. 3 attacks, 1,030 rounds expended, 1,770 remaining. Average 343 rounds per engagement. At that rate, he had ammunition for approximately 5 more attacks. Negative on reinforcements, sir. Every position is under pressure. I can hold. You can't hold alone for 8 more hours. I've been holding alone for 4 hours already. Math says I can do 8. The company commander didn't respond immediately. Harmon heard background noise. Radio chatter. Explosions. Gunfire. The entire perimeter was under assault. Conserve ammunition. We'll try to get someone to you by dawn. Understood, sir. But Harmon knew that was impossible. He was on his own until sunrise, or until his ammunition ran out. Whichever came first, He made a decision. He needed to force the Japanese to commit more time between attacks, wear down their morale as much as their numbers. Make them afraid to attack Hill 312. The hill had a slight depression 20 yards to his right. Good cover, different angle of fire. If he moved the gun between engagements, the Japanese would think there were multiple positions. Would hesitate? Would probe more carefully? Would buy him time? Moving the gun meant physical labor. 31 pounds of machine gun, 60 pounds of ammunition in metal cans, 91 pounds total. 20 yards across broken ground, in darkness. While exhausted, Harmon started dragging equipment. The machine gun went first. He crawled, pulling it behind him. The metal scraped on volcanic rock. His hands were already blistered. The rough metal tore open the blisters. Blood made his grip slippery. Didn't matter. Next came the ammunition cans. 2 trips, 30 pounds each. His shoulders ached. His left arm burned where shrapnel had cut him. Sweat soaked his uniform despite the night air. Didn't matter. What mattered was psychology. Movement created confusion. Confusion bought time. Time let him survive. He set up the gun in the new position. Fed a fresh belt through the receiver. Charged the bolt. Tested the traverse. Good angle of fire covering the same 600 yards of frontage. But from a position 20 yards right of where the Japanese expected him to be. Next attack would come from a direction they didn't anticipate. Would catch them by surprise. Would make them question their intelligence. Would make them hesitate before committing to future attacks. Harmon settled behind the gun, wrapped his bleeding hands around the grips, watched the darkness downslope where Japanese soldiers were regrouping. Planning their next assault, believing they knew where he was, they were wrong, and that mistake would cost them. Between 2,301 hours and 0245 hours, the Japanese committed 5 more attacks against Hill 312. Each attack came with different tactics, different approaches, different levels of aggression. The Japanese battalion commander was learning, adapting, throwing everything he had at what he believed was the weakest point in the Marine defensive line. He didn't know he was facing 1 Marine with 1 gun. Mass charge. 300 soldiers. The Japanese commander had decided to overwhelm the position through sheer numbers. If Hill 312 had multiple guns, this attack would force them all to reveal their positions. If it had limited ammunition, this attack would drain it. Harmon waited in his new position on the right flank. The Japanese expected fire from the center, where he'd been before. They formed their assault line accordingly, concentrated their troops toward the center of the hill. When Harmon opened fire from the right flank, the entire Japanese formation was exposed. Enfilade fire. Down the length of their line. Each burst hitting multiple soldiers, not crossing their front, but raking their flank. The psychological impact was immediate and devastating. They'd planned for frontal fire. Instead, bullets came from their exposed side. Officers screamed orders, tried to wheel the formation. But 300 men can't pivot quickly under fire, especially when every burst drops 2 or 3 soldiers. When leaders fall trying to direct the turn. When chaos spreads faster than orders, the attack broke in 5 minutes. Survivors retreated in disorder. Harmon had fired 290 rounds. Estimated 50 to 70 Japanese casualties. 1,770 rounds minus 290. 1,480 remaining. Smaller probing force. 80 soldiers. Testing the center position where Harmon had been originally. Moving cautiously, expecting resistance, Harmon remained silent in his right flank position. Let them advance. Watched them close to 100 yards. They moved with confidence now. Believed the center position was abandoned. Believed the previous fire had come from a different gun somewhere on the right. At 100 yards, Harmon opened fire. The angle caught them completely by surprise. Fire coming from a position they'd already mapped as active, but they'd believed it was a different gun, different crew. Now they realized the Marine gunners were moving between positions, creating illusions, making them fight ghosts. The psychological shock broke the attack immediately. Soldiers scattered, retreated without orders. The Japanese commander was losing control of his troops. They were becoming afraid of Hill 312, afraid of guns that moved, afraid of fire that came from unexpected angles. Engagement time, 4 minutes. Rounds expended, 140. 1480 minus 140. 1340 remaining. Two-pronged assault. 120 soldiers from the left, 100 from the right. Simultaneous pressure from both flanks. Smart tactic. Force the defender to split his fire, create openings through divided attention. Harmon moved back to the center position during the approach. Dragged the gun 20 yards left. Set up. While they were still at 200 yards. They couldn't see him moving in the darkness. When both groups committed to their assault, Harmon was exactly where they didn't expect. Center position. Perfect angle to engage both flanks. He alternated fire. Left group, 4 bursts. Right group, 4 bursts. Back to left, back to right. Neither group could coordinate. Both took steady casualties. Both lost momentum. Officers on both flanks tried to communicate, coordinate a simultaneous rush. But Harmon heard their voices, targeted them. 2 officers down on the left, 1 on the right. The attacks lost cohesion. Both groups retreated after 7 minutes. Rounds expended, 380, 1340 minus 380. 960 remaining. Japanese brought forward grenade throwers, Type 89 grenade dischargers, knee mortars, trying to suppress his position with indirect fire. Smart adaptation. If they couldn't see him to shoot him, they'd blanket the area with explosives. Grenades started landing at 80 yards. Walked up the slope, 70 yards. 60 yards. Getting closer. Harmon moved the gun back 15 yards. Set up behind better cover. Let the grenades land where he'd been. The explosions were impressive, but they were hitting empty ground. When the grenades stopped, the Japanese infantry rushed forward, expecting to find him suppressed, disoriented. Instead, they found him repositioned with clear fields of fire. Harmon targeted the grenade throwers first. They were visible by the arc of their throws, backlit by distant fires, easy targets. 6 grenade throwers went down in rapid succession. Without suppressive fire, the infantry assault faltered. Harmon walked bursts through their formation, methodical, precise. The attack broke in 6 minutes. Rounds expended, 220, 960 minus 220, 740 remaining. Pre-dawn darkness was thinning. Grey light bleeding into the eastern sky. The Japanese commander committed his largest force yet, 500 soldiers. All-out attempt before daylight brought American air power. They attacked the right flank position where Harmon had been hours earlier, expected him to be there, committed everything to overrunning that location. Harmon was back in his original center position. The first position. The one they'd forgotten about. The one they'd written off after he moved. When 500 Japanese soldiers charged the empty right flank, Harmon opened fire into their exposed side from the center. The surprise was total. They'd expected resistance from the right. Instead, it came from the center they'd abandoned, from the position they'd stopped watching, from the angle that gave him perfect enfilade down their entire formation. Harmon raked the line, targeted leaders, targeted soldiers carrying flags and unit standards, targeted radio operators, broke their command structure with surgical precision. The attack dissolved into chaos in 3 minutes. 500 soldiers running into each other, tripping over their own dead, officers screaming contradictory orders. Some tried to turn toward Harmon's position, others retreated. Most just stood frozen, unable to process what was happening. Harmon kept firing. Burst, shift, burst, mechanical precision. No emotion, just math and geometry and bullets finding targets. After 8 minutes, the survivors retreated in complete disorder. Largest attack, biggest failure. Rounds expended, 440. 740 minus 440. 300 remaining. Harmon sat behind his gun as grey dawn light spread across Guadalcanal. 300 rounds left. 3 hours until sunrise. His hands were bleeding, his shoulders were bruised purple from recoil, his ears rang so loud he could barely hear, but he was still alive, still fighting, still holding Hill 312. At 0421 hours, Harmon heard them forming up. The sound was different this time. Not in one company, not two. The entire Japanese reserve battalion was moving into position. Hundreds of men crashing through jungle vegetation, equipment rattling, officers shouting orders without concern for noise discipline. They'd given up on stealth, given up on tactics. This was desperation. Harmon estimated 800 troops, maybe more, coming from 4 directions simultaneously. North, south, east, west. Every approach to Hill 312. They were going to swarm the position from all sides, overwhelm him through pure mass. 300 rounds remaining, 800 soldiers attacking. The math was simple and brutal. He couldn't stop them all, couldn't even slow them all, could only make them pay the highest price possible before they overran his position. He checked his rifle. M1 Garand leaning against the sandbags. 8 rounds loaded, 64 more in bandoliers. When the machine gun went dry, the rifle would buy him maybe another 2 minutes. Then it would be his Ka bar knife, and whatever he could do with his hands. Harmon had accepted he probably wouldn't survive this attack, but he'd make them remember Hill 312. At 0429 hours, the attacks began. Banzai, Banzai, Tenohaka Banzai. 400 voices screaming from 4 directions. The sound was overwhelming, primal, designed to break the defenders' will before the fighting even started. Harmon targeted the north column first. Closest threat, 200 yards, moving fast through the pre-dawn grey light. He could see them clearly now, a mass of soldiers charging uphill with fixed bayonets. Fire, burst, shift, burst, target leaders, target soldiers with satchel charges. The front rank went down. The second rank climbed over them and kept coming. 180 yards, swivel to east column. Same range, moving through rougher terrain but still advancing. Fire, burst, shift, burst. Take down the visible officers. The soldiers with radio packs create confusion in their command structure. 160 yards on the east. Swivel to south column. 220 yards, largest concentration of troops, coming straight up the main approach. Fire sustained bursts, breaking from his precision pattern. No time for controlled fire anymore, just need to slow them, force them to pay for every yard. 140 yards on the north now. Critical range. If they closed past 100 yards, they'd be too close, too many targets, too many directions. The gun couldn't traverse fast enough. Swivel to west column, 190 yards. Moving through light vegetation, fire, burst, shift, burst. Drop the lead soldiers. Make the ones behind them hesitate. Back to north column, 120 yards. He concentrated fire, rapid bursts walking across their line. The column faltered. Went to ground at 115 yards, pinned by accurate fire. East column still advancing. 140 yards. Swivel, fire. The ammunition belt was running low, maybe 40 rounds left. He drained it into the east column. Soldiers dropped. Others dove for cover. The advance stalled at 130 yards. Harmon reached for his last ammunition belt. 260 rounds remaining in this war. His hands shook as he loaded. Not from fear, from exhaustion. From 10 hours of continuous combat, from blood loss and dehydration and the simple fact that human bodies have limits, he charged the bolt, swiveled to south column, 180 yards, still coming, fire, burst, shift, burst. West column at 160 yards, fire, burst, shift, burst. North and east columns recovering, preparing to rush from 115 and 130 yards respectively. Officers screaming orders, rallying troops for final assault. 600 soldiers still combat effective. Closing from 4 directions, 260 rounds remaining. Harmon couldn't stop them. Then he heard it. Distant thunder. But not thunder. Artillery. American 105mm howitzers. Firing from positions behind Henderson Field. The company commander had called in a fire mission. Danger close. Shells landing within 100 yards of friendly positions. The first salvo screamed overhead. Harmon pressed himself flat in the foxhole. The shells impacted 80 yards downslope, right on top of the north column. High explosive rounds detonating in sequence, shrapnel ripping through massed infantry. The second salvo hit the east column. Same result. Bodies flying, soldiers screaming, the coordinated attack disintegrating under artillery fire. Third salvo walked across the south column. Fourth salvo hit the west. The entire slope erupted in explosions. Smoke and dirt and fire. The barrage lasted 4 minutes. Methodical, professional, walking up and down the approaches to Hill 312. The forward observer had excellent visibility now in the growing dawn light. Could see the massed Japanese formations clearly. Could adjust fire with precision. At 0441 hours, the artillery stopped. Silence fell across the slope. Then the screaming of wounded soldiers, Japanese officers trying to rally survivors, trying to maintain unit cohesion. But the attack was broken. Harmon raised his head. Looked down the slope. Bodies everywhere. Estimated 200 dead from artillery alone, unknown wounded. The surviving Japanese soldiers were retreating, not running, walking, defeated, moving back toward the river in scattered groups. The eighth attack had failed. The final attack, the all-out assault that was supposed to overwhelm Hill 312 through sheer mass. It had broken against one Marine with one gun and American artillery support. Harmon still had 260 rounds, never had to fire the last belt, never had to transition to his rifle, never had to fight hand-to-hand with his knife. He sat behind his gun. His hands were shaking violently now, adrenaline crash beginning, 10 hours of combat, 11 separate attacks, approximately 2,520 rounds fired, estimated 180 to 240 Japanese killed by his gun alone, unknown wounded. Hill 312 had held. Henderson Field was secure. At 0508 hours, Harmon heard voices behind him. American voices. He turned. A squad of 8 Marines was climbing the slope, led by Staff Sergeant Williams. Reinforcements. Finally, Williams reached the position, stopped, stared at Harmon, stared at the single gun, stared at the slope covered with Japanese dead, stared back at Harmon. Jesus Christ, read, "You held this alone?" Harmon's voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. "Davies and Chen held too, sir. They just didn't make it." Williams looked at the 2 bodies under ponchos, looked at the ammunition cans, most empty, one still half full, looked at the slope again, bodies everywhere in the growing daylight. "How many attacks?" 11, sir. "How the hell did you hold?" Harmon didn't answer immediately. He removed the ammunition belt from his gun, 260 rounds, set it aside carefully, checked the barrel, hot but not warped. The gun had performed perfectly. Finally, "I shot what I could see, sir. Tried not to waste bullets." Williams would write in his after-action report that night, PFC Harmon's defensive action on Hill 312 prevented enemy breakthrough. Estimated 200 to 300 enemy casualties attributed to his position. Maintained fire discipline under extreme pressure for 14 hours. Recommend immediate award of Silver Star. At 0600 hours, Corpsman reached Hill 312. Navy Hospital Corpsman 2nd Class Robert Martinez climbed the slope with his medical bag. He'd been treating wounded Marines all night across the perimeter. Shrapnel wounds, gunshot wounds, men torn apart by artillery and mortars. He'd seen the worst the human body could endure. But when he reached Harmon's position, he stopped. The slope below was covered with Japanese dead, hundreds of them, all killed approaching a single machine gun position. Martinez had seen defensive positions before, had seen what coordinated fire from multiple guns could do. This was different. One gun, one Marine. Harmon sat behind the Browning. His hands were shredded. Blisters torn open. blood and gun oil mixed together. His face was black with carbon residue, eyes hollow, staring at nothing. "Let me see your hands, Marine." Harmon didn't respond. "That's an order. Show me your hands." Harmon slowly released his grip on the machine gun. His fingers wouldn't straighten completely, cramped from 10 hours of holding the grips. Martinez examined them. Second-degree burns from the hot barrel, deep lacerations from ammunition belts, blisters on every finger. "You need evacuation. These hands need real treatment." "Gun still works." Harmon's voice was flat, emotionless. "I can still shoot it. You can barely move your fingers. I can pull a trigger." Martinez looked at Staff Sergeant Williams. Williams shook his head slightly. The meaning was clear. Don't argue. Let him process this his own way. Martinez cleaned and bandaged Harmon's hands, treated the shrapnel wounds on his face and left arm, gave him water. Harmon drank mechanically. No expression. No emotion. Just drinking because someone told him to. "You need to eat something." "Not hungry." "When did you last eat?" Harmon thought about it. "Yesterday." 1,600 hours. "Canned hash." 18 hours ago. Martinez pulled a chocolate bar from his bag. "Eat this, doctor's orders." Harmon ate the chocolate slowly. Tasted like nothing. Everything tasted like cordite and blood. At 0730 hours, Lieutenant Colonel Louis Chesty Puller arrived at Hill 312. Puller commanded 1st Battalion, 7th Marines. He was a legend in the Corps. Guadalcanal was his 4th war. He'd been fighting since Haiti in 1919, had more combat experience than most general officers. Nothing surprised him anymore. Hill 312 surprised him. He walked the position slowly, counted the empty ammunition cans, looked at the single gun, looked at the 2 bodies under ponchos, looked at Davies and Chen, looked at Harmon sitting behind the Browning with bandaged hands. "Your PFC, Harmon?" "Yes, sir." "You held this position alone?" "Yes, sir." "For how long?" "For how long?" 14 hours, sir. From 1,730 yesterday to 0508 this morning. Puller looked down the slope. Japanese bodies stretched 200 yards. Some areas had multiple bodies stacked where attacks had concentrated. He'd seen battlefields before. This looked like a company-strength defensive position. Multiple guns. Multiple crews. "How many attacks?" 11, sir. "How many rounds did you fire?" "Approximately 2,500, sir. Started with 2,800. Have about 300 remaining." Puller did the math in his head. 2,500 rounds. Estimated 200 to 300 Japanese casualties visible on the slope, roughly 10 to 12 rounds per kill. Standard machine gun doctrine averaged 300 to 500 rounds per casualty. Something was very wrong with that math. Or very right. "What were you doing different, son?" "Aiming, sir. Every burst." "Explain that." "Standard doctrine is sustained fire. 400 to 600 rounds per minute. Suppressive fire. I didn't have ammunition for that, sir. So I aimed. Short bursts, 3 to 5 rounds. Pick a target, fire, pick the next target." "You were aiming a machine gun?" "Yes, sir. Like a rifle. Same as I learned hunting back in Nebraska." Puller stared at him. 30 years in the Marine Corps. 4 wars. He'd never heard of anyone shooting a machine gun like a rifle. Doctrine was doctrine. Machine guns were area weapons. You suppressed the enemy with volume of fire. You didn't aim individual bursts. "Show me." Williams handed Harmon a loaded belt. Harmon fed it through the receiver, charged the bolt. His bandaged hands were clumsy but functional. He pointed downslope at a shattered tree trunk 150 yards away. "See that split in the trunk, sir? Where the Japanese shell hit it?" "I see it." Harmon fired. 3-round burst, All 3 rounds hit within 6 inches of the split. He swiveled 10 degrees right, pointed at a coconut palm 180 yards away. Second branch from the top, left side. 4-round burst. The branch broke, fell, swiveled 10 degrees left, pointed at a rock outcropping 200 yards away. The white rock. Center mass. 5-round burst. Rock chips flew. 3 targets, 12 rounds, 3 hits. Precision fire at ranges where most gunners would be laying down suppressive fire and hoping for random hits. Puller watched in silence. Then he turned to Williams. "Get me the battalion intelligence officer. I want casualty estimates for last night's action. I want ammunition expenditure reports from every machine gun position on the line. And I want this Marine's technique documented." "Yes, sir." Puller turned back to Harmon. "I'm recommending you for the Silver Star. Your action prevented a breakthrough that could have cost us Henderson Field. I'd rather have another assistant gunner, sir." The corners of Puller's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "You'll get both. But first, you're going to teach every machine gunner in this battalion how you shoot that weapon." "Sir, the instructors at Camp Lejeune said—" "I don't care what the instructors at Camp Lejeune said. Those instructors aren't on Guadalcanal. They aren't facing what we're facing. You just proved their doctrine doesn't work when you're outnumbered and undersupplied. Your method does work, so you're going to teach it." "Yes, sir." Puller looked at the slope one more time. 200 Japanese bodies, 1 Marine's work. Then he looked at Harmon. "What you did last night changes how we fight, son. You just don't know it yet." At 0800 hours, the sun rose fully over Guadalcanal. The Battle of Henderson Field was over. The Japanese had failed to break through, failed to retake the airfield, failed to push the Marines into the sea. Hill 312 had held. 1 Marine, 1 gun, 1 innovation born from necessity. And the Marine Corps would never teach machine gunnery the same way again. October 26, 1942. Word spread through the 1st Marine Division like wildfire. Red Harmon held Hill 312 alone for 14 hours. 1 gun against 11 Banzai charges. He shoots bursts, not belts. Other machine gun crews heard the story. Some believed it, some thought it was exaggerated. Combat stories always got bigger in the retelling. 1 Marine holding off hundreds of Japanese? Impossible. Then they saw the slope. Working parties spent 2 days clearing Japanese bodies from Hill 312. They counted as they worked. 238 dead, all killed approaching a single machine gun position. The numbers didn't lie. Corporal Thomas Mitchell from Weapons Platoon climbed Hill 312 on October 27th, wanted to see the position for himself, found Harmon cleaning his gun, hands still bandaged, face still showing the marks of shrapnel cuts. "They say you aimed every burst." "Yes. That's not doctrine." "No, it's not." "Does it work? Does it work?" Harmon looked at him. "I'm alive. 238 Japanese aren't. You tell me if it works." Mitchell thought about that. His crew had been firing continuous suppressive bursts for 3 months. Standard doctrine. They'd burned through thousands of rounds. Their confirmed kill count was maybe 15. Harmon had fired 2,500 rounds in one night, 238 kills. "Can you teach it? You know how to aim a rifle?" "Yes." "Then you already know. Just aim the machine gun the same way. Short bursts. Pick your target. Fire. Pick the next target. Fire. Don't spray bullets. Place them." Mitchell tried it that afternoon. Set up his gun on the range. Picked individual targets instead of firing at areas. 3-round bursts. 4-round bursts. Aimed each one like a rifle shot. His ammunition consumption dropped 40%. His accuracy increased dramatically. Within a week, his entire crew was using Harmon's method. Other crews started experimenting. Some loved it, found their ammunition lasted longer and their effectiveness increased. Others hated it, said it went against their training, said machine guns weren't supposed to be aimed like rifles. But the ones who tried it survived longer. And survival was the only metric that mattered on Guadalcanal. November 12, 1942. Japanese radio intercepts mentioned Hill 312. Intelligence officers translated the messages. Japanese after-action reports from the October 24 assault. One passage stood out.